Hey everyone, shipping crisis continues. Not only are ships backing up off the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, but they are backing up around in ports all around the United States. Worse than that, they're backing up on ports in China. They are not being able to get loaded up with things in China, let alone get across the ocean to wait in line on this side of the ocean too. So whose fault is it? Well, I'm going to tell you. All right, well, thanks so much for subscribing if you've already subscribed. If you've already subscribed, please check to make sure you're still subscribed. People keep getting unsubscribed. Wonder how that happens. Well, also, please hit that like button. It does help the algorithm. So right at it. Okay. What's going on with all this? Okay, so we got all these shipping containers on all these ships. We're talking about millions of shipping containers held up, waiting their turn in line to get to the port of Los Angeles, Long Beach. Those are two major ports. They're right across from each other, and all these ships are waiting to get in. 70 plus container ships, and these container ships are big. So what's holding this all up? There are reports that sometimes there's only one crane working to unload these ships. And the real issue is that there's just no room to put the containers. They can take the containers off the ship, but then there's nowhere to put them because the entire container storage area of these ports are packed full. The problem is not getting the containers off the ships. The problem is getting the containers off of the property. They cannot get enough trains and trucks into these port facilities to get all those containers gone. So, who's to blame for that, right? I mean, whenever something like this happens, if you're like me, the natural inclination is say, what did the government do? And in this case, you're not wrong. First things first, let's go back before the pandemic. The United States government, in its infinite wisdom, decided that it would be a great idea to enforce much more stringently the laws on hiring of truck drivers. So basically, before, if you went and got a drug test to apply for a job, or an alcohol test to apply for a job with a trucking company, and you got turned down, well, you could wait it off. Especially if it was alcohol, you could wait it off, and then you could go and apply again to another company. And if you pass the drug test and the alcohol sobriety test, I mean, you're good to go, right? So they said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. If you failed at one company, basically you're not able to apply to any other companies unless you go through this arduous process. Now, it's not just a stop doing drugs and stop doing alcohol and stop drinking on the job, but rather you have to go through this whole long process. So a lot of people, they flunked out of their tests and they said, enough of this. I'm going to go get a different job, right? Now, at first, if you're like me and I don't do alcohol, I don't do drugs, I don't like the idea of people like that driving trucks. But at the same time, people mess up, and they can get their lives together. Maybe failing that drug test helps somebody get their life together. And we're not even talking about just drugs. I mean, we're talking about like, softer drugs, like things that are legal in certain states, if you know what I mean. Should people be blocked from ever driving a truck again because of that? I don't think so. They also rolled in some new regulations on who can have hazardous material tanker endorsements. And a lot of people who had those endorsements, who were doing their jobs, suddenly lost their jobs because new regulations coming in. And then, moving forward all the way up to the great event of our time that happened, we have suddenly 87,000 truckers got fired. Not held off or whatever, but fired. And a lot of those guys either decided not to come back to trucking, or if they were older, they decided it's time to be retired, or they went and got different jobs. Truckers usually are kind of guys and gals that make things happen. So if they can make things happen on a big rig, they can make things happen elsewhere too. And a lot of them found jobs elsewhere and just said, enough of this garbage. I'm not putting up with that anymore. I've been meaning to quit for a while. And once they moved over, they just didn't want to come back. More and more have been retiring. So the big, great event of our times, I'm going to lay that one squarely on the shoulders of our government as well. I mean, they made some choices. They didn't let the companies have choices in this matter. They just forced them all to shut down. And that is their fault. In addition to that, guess how many regulations apply to railroads? If you guessed a mountain of them, you'd be right. It's not even possible to keep up with all the regulations with railroads. It's just ridiculous. And then once you take a railroad into California decides to have some extra regulations and such. It's very, very difficult for them to get rail cars in and out of California. And so getting all these shipping containers out on rail just becomes harder and harder every year. Additionally, you need specialized rail cars. Okay, you can't just put a shipping container on a rail car that's designed to carry, oil, or one that's designed to carry food, like wheat or corn. You can't just use different rail cars for different things. You have to use those particular rail cars for those particular things. You familiar with those like box cars? You can't put a shipping container on a box car. You can't just like knock the top off and then just drop a shipping container on top of it. No, it needs to actually be the proper length. It's got to be reinforced to take that weight, and those are particular rail cars. And they don't like making rail cars. If they don't have enough rail cars, they don't make more. They can try pulling them from other parts of the system, but they don't make more for a crunch that's happening right now. And even if we did, we probably would not be making in the United States. If you know differently, pop it in the comments below. Okay, so next thing is we have this whole issue, not just because the shipping containers are trying to get off, but we have a whole lot of shipping containers trying to get in all at once. And the reason for this is just the same thing. Imagine you're going down the highway and somebody slams on their brakes. The person behind them slams on their brakes even harder. And soon you have this ripple that's going back through the highway, right? And if more cars are entering into this disturbance in the force, if you will, faster than they're exiting this disturbance, you start getting people actually coming to a stop. And as that happens, you have a traffic jam that forms from one person slamming on the brakes far up ahead, right? And that's kind of what happened here, is that we decided to, and by we, I mean the wonderful benevolent powers over us, decided that it'd be a great idea to shut down the global economy. Because, sort of like a 5-year-old with a light switch, like flick, 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 and you're like, stop it, you're going to break the light, you're going to break the switch. Well, our benevolent powers that be over us were going flick, 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 with the global economy. And if you're not supposed to do that with a light switch, I guarantee you're not supposed to do that with the global economy. People at the time were warning, you don't do this. This is bad. This is a horrible idea. Don't do it. They did it anyway because, they know better. So when they did that, they created this, they stopped everything. People kept consuming, but they stopped producing, stopped shipping. And everything shut down. Ships coming across the ocean from China just stopped. The ports were just like completely empty. Nothing to do. And then suddenly they flipped it back on, and suddenly we got to send enough ships to make up for the time we weren't shipping stuff. And the ports can't handle that. We can't do that. China had a couple shutdowns over the past number of months. And that's partially what's causing the problem. It always gets busy in the ports right around this time of year because everyone's trying to get their Christmas goods in. So it's just like one thing on top of the next. And we have a trucker shortage. And then on top of this, let's just talk about a little thing. You can't just put a shipping container on an ordinary truck. You need to have a chassis, a special chassis for putting a container on the trucks, okay? And these chassis, some American companies make them, but most of them are made in China. And so we slammed a tariff on China last year, right? And or it was the year before. We slammed a tariff on all Chinese goods, which made that more expensive. But then we hit them with punitive tariffs to the point where we tripled the cost of a chassis for a truck to haul a shipping container. Tripled the cost. If you're a company and we're having a supply crunch and you want to go out and buy extra chassis for the trucks to haul all these extra shipping containers, and then you're looking at like, gee, this is 3 times more expensive than it should be. How about I wait? Yeah, that's what you and I would do if we went to the store and the thing we wanted was suddenly super, super ridiculously expensive. We'd say, I don't need it that bad. And that's what all these companies have done is it's like, I don't need it that bad. And they just haven't been buying it. And therefore, you don't have enough trucks that are capable of hauling shipping containers off those ports to move them to elsewhere in LA and elsewhere in California. And that's where we are. We tariffed our way into this predicament partially. We shut down the global economy our way into this problem. And we just have lots and lots of fun regulations that just are making our lives miserable. But, hey, that's what government's for, right? Thanks, government. All right, so that's kind of what's going on here. And that's why I would say that the majority of the blame here is all on the shoulders of the U.S. and maybe another government that, if I mention, I will get demonetized for. Starts with a C, and it's across the ocean. Yes, so please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. I love all you guys. It's been quite a journey, and we're just beginning. Got some exciting things in the works coming. We're going to do a few product reviews on products that I sought out. Those will be coming in a couple weeks. I got a new studio setup that's going to happen for different things. I'm going to be able to have a table in front of me with a bunch of stuff going on there, so I can show you some packs, some loadouts, all sort. Get a little more hands-on, and even maybe do a little bit of cooking down there. Show you how to cook when the power's off, and what I'd be cooking out of my long-term preps, and how to make something that is edible from that. Lots of exciting stuff. Hope you stick around, and I will see you later. Steve Poplar, out.